Warning. The topics discussed on this podcast are subject to adult themes and languages. We seek to unravel the unexplained and unknown. This is Encounters.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Encounters. My name's Dakota,
I'm Amanda.
and today we are discussing the mysterious encounters of service member Terrell Copeland.
Yes. This was one I didn't expect to be as fruitful as it was. I was shocked by everything that happened to poor Terrell.
Amanda, you didn't expect human breeding program?
What are you fucking shut up? No.
You mean you didn't expect the Bourne Ultimatum?
No, I definitely did not. Oh my goodness. There was a lot going on.
By the end of this story, there's a lot going on. I feel like this is a very realistic, true encounter that the History Channel got a hold of and put a little too much sriracha on it. But we'll see. Terrell Copeland his story is very believable. And whatever he experienced will leave up to you, the listener, to determine if you believe his story is real or not.
Yeah. It was also really nice because it's a more modern story that we got to see Terrell and hear the story from him, because luckily they have not a whole episode. They put a little too much extra stuff in it, but Terrell does tell his own story. So that's really, really cool. He seems like a really calm, cool, collected, normal guy.
Yes, and I think it's important that we state... I don't know. Is it fair to call him a contactee, or is he an abductee?
Abductee.
That's what I was saying. So, these are the experiences of an abductee who has not only encounters of the third kind, but definitely in later years experiences an encounter of the fourth kind.
Yeah, very much so.
But it's really nice. It's kind of the full breadth. And like Amanda said, it is early 2000s. So we have not only video footage accessible to us in digital format, but we also have the person still accessible to us. So that gives it great credibility, as well as his demeanor, his person, his military career,
right, very much so.
What is it? What you would call his character, is solid and in good standing.
Exactly.
So it all goes together to be a interesting point of view, I guess.
Yeah. Is there anything else? I think that kind of goes over.
Let's dive on in.
So there's not a lot that's known about Terrell's early life. This all came out kind of later in life, and he hasn't really gone back and talked about his childhood too much. His friends often refer to him as being very straightforward and sensible, and as we talked about, from an early age he kind of dreamed about joining the military and just going on to have a successful career. But things started happening to Terrell, and it came out that at the age of 15, he actually had his first UFO sighting. There's not much said about it, but this all really came out when he went to a gathering. Dakota, do you want to tell us more about that?
Yes, in 2009, the Starborn sisters held a contactee gathering, asylum. It was a retreat for those who had been either abducted or contacted. If you are familiar with encounters, we've talked about the Starborn sisters before and their own encounters and how they started a therapy program for people who are other contactees and other abductees, because in that episode we learned that there's a major difference and that they have different needs as far as community goes amongst other contactees to contactees or abductees to abductees. And in 2009, Terrell Copeland drove about 600 miles from Suffolk, Virginia to speak for the very first time about his experiences throughout his life. And he would recall a few very specific instances, and as he moved through the, I would say, unpacking the trauma of his life and these encounters, he would think of a few more encounters that he had early on in his life where he would see things or remember seeing what we would call grays, just kind of in his imagination or in his consciousness. So he believes he's been a contactee from a very early age, like Amanda was saying.
Yeah.
His first encounter of the, I would say, second or third kind, where he visually saw them, was for the very first time in 2000. It was the winter of 2000 at the Northwest Naval Base in Chesapeake Bay. He was serving as a Marine at the time, and he recalls seeing a light in the sky, and it was just floating there, hovering, silent. He said it changed from being a yellow oval to being a green circle, and once it caught sight of him looking at it, it just disappeared.
Terrell had been taught in the military how to observe things, and he had been seeing, other military crafts. So I know that's kind of one of the questions that comes up, because he was on a naval base. How do we know it wasn't just like a different kind of craft? But the way he describes it, one thing, it was like way too close to him for it to be a military craft. And he said he knows how to observe things. That's something they taught him. And he knew really quickly that that was not what that was. And I think like the way it moved was odd. So he pretty quickly, like I just said, he quickly realized it wasn't anything America was making.
The second encounter he has is a little bit more hands-on. It's a few visual encounters stacked on top of each other. In October 2005, 5 years later, in Suffolk, Virginia, he recalls seeing a blue orb in the sky on October 24th. On the evening, he was on a street not far from Dismal Swamp when he saw off in the distance about 2 miles away a, quote, massive ball of light, end quote, that was an estimated 15,000 feet in the sky. And he said he was watching this ball of light and watched a fighter jet fly off of it, and it looked as though it couldn't see it, or it just passed through it without any notice or acknowledgement. He wasn't quite able to wrap his head around what he had seen. And then, so on the second night, he again sights this blue floating oval in the sky, which he doesn't recognize as a different type of fighter plane or any kind of thing that he would have been working on in the military, because at this point he has been discharged for a medical illness, right? Because he's left by 2005.
Yes. He was discharged because he had a rare blood disease, and the military doctors didn't know what to do or how that it would affect him, so he was unfortunately discharged. Because this, for him, being in the military, like I think I mentioned at the beginning, was like a big childhood dream of his. So as soon as he got out of high school, he enlisted, and then two years later, he had to leave.
He tries to pursue the lights, but is unable to actively get his camera out and loses them in the sky. The third night, on the 31st, he sees the orb again, but this time he is dead ready. He has his camera out. He pursues them in his car, and he says, quote, "I was driving in front of the Fresh Pride Grocery Center and saw it up close. The light was hovering above the center. I pulled up to the parking lot and was not prepared for what I saw. There was an object inside the light. The light had been just an illusion.
At first, I thought it was a stealth bomber, but I realized a stealth wasn't that big. End quote. Of course, Terrell's referring to the stealth bomber, which is our Dorito-shaped stealth bomber airplane, the big black one.
Mm-hmm.
He basically gets to the parking lot of this place because he's been following this orb. The orb turns into 2 orbs and then hovers around, and he sees a giant triangular crack. And that's when he determines that it is not something American made, because it doesn't look like the stealth bomber that was the most recent thing that he had been working on when he was working with the military. Fast forward another 2 years, and in March of 2007, he has his 3rd encounter where he films 2 objects hovering in the sky. One appears to be a plasma-covered, sphere that seems to have a reflective, protective shell. And the other is a color-changing orb. He captures this on video. It's slightly dodgy, it's 2007, so it's not the best camera quality. It's not like some
high-definition night vision camera, but it still captures what appears to be a force field-like sphere and a orb of light that is changing colors from green to red to yellow to blue to red. A lot of red beeps. But it's way off in the distance. He recalls that when he stepped out and was in kind of full sight of it, the flashing light seemingly was responding and looking at him, trying to communicate to the plasma orb. So lots of flashing lights in the sky. So the next encounter Terrell kind of has is one where there seems to be a bit more direct contact. Terrell talks about a military contractor, quote unquote, coming to visit and wanting to speak about the truth. They have a long conversation wherein he says that he knows the truth about the visitors, and Terrell doesn't really elaborate anymore on this conversation. He just remembers having this long conversation and then going to sleep and having a strange dream about a mysterious orb of light, just giant balls of light, and then thinking, this is not usual. Something's wrong here. Maybe I'm in over my head. Maybe I'm not supposed to be looking at this stuff. And I woke up from a nap by the sound of someone trying to enter my apartment. I said, "Who is it?" There was no answer. Still, just, you could see the doorknob moving and a scratching at the door. And I keep a firearm. It was on my table. And my thought was to get up and check. And then something told me,
"You don't need that weapon. We won't harm you."
It was only then that I realized I was in complete paralysis. The only things I could move were my eyes. He then remembers going back to sleep, waking up at 3:08 a.m., thinking something is wrong, and then waking up again to his alarm at 5:30 in the morning.
Yes.
So, according to his story, he has about 2.5 hours of missing time.
Yes.
Which we would consider his abduction sequence.
Yeah. And real quick, before we keep going, the interesting thing about the military contractor is when they were talking, he showed up right after Terrell recorded that video. So that was one thing that was already pretty strange. I did see from a source that he uploaded it to YouTube, but it's not on YouTube anymore, like his original version. And then this military contractor started asking really personal questions out of Terrell, about his childhood, his family. So it was making him really, really, really uncomfortable. And then at the end of the conversation, he says to him something like, the government has communication with aliens, and the more research you do, like, the more you'll find, or something. He said something really cryptic to him about, the government being able to talk to aliens.
And it was almost like a threat, like, the more research you do, they're gonna find you.
Yes, and then all of a sudden, as Dakota just mentioned, he took a nap, and then he was experiencing things like paralysis and missing time. So all of that happened in a really quick sequence. So to me, all those things are so terrifying.
It's also within this time period that he starts experiencing, like, unlocked memories of previous abductions.
Yes.
He specifically recalls in 2008 a woman abduction with an elongated skull, which appeared to be operating on him while he was awake. Do you have more information on that, Amanda?
Yeah, just a little bit. After the abduction, he remembers waking up, seeing this woman, seeing what she was doing, and then after, he suddenly is standing on his balcony waving at the spaceship as it's flying away.
Yeah, and this woman, he says, I saw a woman who did not have complete human features. She had the typical black eyes that you hear about, and she had an elongated skull that startled me. And the next memory I have is waving goodbye at the cylindrical-shaped ship.
So one of his other abductions he does talk about is he had fallen asleep on his couch, and he woke up, and he was in a massive dining hall. And there was a lot of tables, and everything was white. And he said there was things that looked like people eating. He thought he was dreaming and only believed that it was real was his speakers had been moved. He normally would keep his speakers on his windowsill, and after having this dream, he woke up to find his speakers in a spot that he would never put them. So what he believed happened is whatever took him was using the window and had to move the speakers out of the way so they wouldn't break them. So they put him in a spot that he himself knows that he would never put those speakers.
So he was eventually contacted by the History Channel for the history series UFO Hunters, and his story became case number 58105. And his story was kind of brought to the forefront. Like, I watched the episode today while preparing for this episode, and I've never seen the show before, which is weird considering how much research I've done on cases like this. So I'm going to try and see more about this, but the host seemed to be one super gung-ho alien hunter and a more like skeptic science-based person. So that was really fun. They sat down with him and listened to his story, and then found another guy from Ohio who had similar footage from around the same time, and we got to look at Terrell's footage as well as the other guy's footage, and it really it looks like something strange. Whether it's extraterrestrials or not, who knows, but it is definitely unidentified flying objects, because of where the videos sit, it's floating over no-fly zones in the airspace.
Mm-hmm. In Ohio?
And so they sit down with him, and then they talk with him a little bit about why he was discharged from the military, and he talks about his rare blood condition, and the doctors determined that it's kind of like when your body goes through immense amount of stress or immense trauma and it has to repair your bodily tissue or your organs, it produces a large amount of this enzyme. And basically, his body is constantly producing this enzyme. And they were like, well, since we don't know what's going on with you, we kind of have to, you're not fit for battle constantly, so we're going to have to discharge you. And now he works as a forklift operator, or he went on to work as a forklift operator. But one of the hosts of UFO Hunters determines that he is actually an alien-human hybrid, and that is evident by his rare blood condition, but also in the fact that he has slowly since childhood been groomed for alien contact. From the very first sights of seeing images of grays and flashing orbs and baubles, to actually having them interact, to the strange man and his actual abduction sequence.
That was a thing that happened. It was very interesting.
Being told that he is this. Thank you, History Channel, UFO hunters. Wow. Okay, I don't know, y'all. I don't know what I would do if somebody looked me straight in the eye and was like, you are an alien-human hybrid, and you're being groomed for first contact. But honestly, there's a lot of people that do believe that, and I'm not trying to throw shade or be mean to anybody about that. I just don't know how I would react, because I don't know what in my life would put me in those sequences. If I was Terrell Copeland and I had been seeing these things for all of my life and having these experiences, I would definitely be like, wow, yeah, maybe. But
right?
I don't know. I can't explain it.
He's definitely been through a lot. So his reaction is pretty calm for like how I would react if someone told me that, especially like if that was like the first time meeting them. It's like,
that's one of the things. He is a really, really just nice, seemingly nice. I haven't met him in person, but from the interview we saw in that and reading about his story, he seems like a genuinely very nice person.
Yes.
Who is just like, these things have happened to me. These are the things that I've seen. What the hell is happening?
To me, he kind of comes off as like a messenger. Like the more I look into his story and like kind of hear his quotes and like him speak about it, because he even talks about like after having these experiences, wanting to become like a better person. And I don't want to say honored, because once again, as Dakota just mentioned, we don't know him, but like he talks about like being chosen, like the fact that they chose him and that they see him, that he needs to be better. So for a reason, I don't even.
Okay, so ultimately, as he has come to understand his encounters, he has gone on to say that he believes this is ultimately leading to contact. Like Amanda said, a messenger. He is kind of making the first precursor of the extraterrestrials actually making contact with humanity.
Yeah.
He's gone on record to say, quote, "I truly believe that what all of this is leading to is a meeting with a biological entity. Every culture from the Aztecs to the Egyptians talks about someone coming from the sky. The information is there for us. Unfortunately, we don't look at things with a logical mindset. As humans with modern civilizations, we've been blessed and we think that we're the top of the proverbial food chain. But that isn't the case. They reveal themselves and intervene in human affairs. We need to get off our high horse. People will not take integration lightly. They are going to show themselves. Get ready. You want change? Change is coming." Yeah, and just for everyone's record, his footage is compared in the UFO Hunters episode. His footage is compared to the footage of UFO enthusiast Michael Lee Hill, which took footage over Lake Erie, Ohio, and also claimed that he had had multiple UFO encounters and abductions since childhood.
Yes, and they also did some blood tests on him, and he also had elevated. I can't remember what it was called, but
the same enzymes that were elevated. I want to say it's cortisol, but I think that's just The Last of Us.
Yeah. So that was also very, very interesting. And it kind of gives prudence, maybe is the word I'm looking for, or like credibility to the fact that Terrell was most likely abducted before he joined the military.
Yeah. It was also really interesting in the episode of UFO Hunters, like they took him to a new doctor and put him through a stress test, and he still tested high with these levels, and they couldn't determine why his body was making this enzyme like crazy. And he wasn't affected by it. He didn't look like he was struggling or it hurt him or anything. And then they ran a test on the UFO enthusiast as well, and they were like, yeah, you also have these high levels. They didn't put him through a stress test. That was interesting.
Right, that was.
But after listening to his life, they were like, you are stressed enough.
Yeah, they also talked a little bit about the town he lived in also having UFO sightings that dated back to
the founding fathers.
Yeah.
Fucking a letter sent to Thomas Jefferson. It was like, there's a fire in the sky, Thomas.
Yeah, so that was also really, really interesting. So there seems to be a lot of credibility to it.
They also said, though, that letter may never have actually gotten to Thomas Jefferson, but that it was written. And I just want everyone to know that just means that even if Thomas Jefferson didn't read that, somebody at that time was like, fucking aliens in the sky, mate. But that is the story of Terrell Copeland, armed service member and UFO contactee abductee.
It's really, really... I don't want to use the word interesting. But...
Do you believe his story?
Yeah, very much so.
I do too. What about you? What about y'all out there? Do you believe Terrell Copeland's story? Let us know.
Do I think maybe some of them may have been dreams and maybe not? Maybe. But I do believe, I think he's pretty credible, especially just like seeing him and all that.
Why lie?
Mm-hmm.
What would he gain from lying?
Exactly.
This young African-American male in America right now. Well, I guess this was 2009.
Well, it was worse.
Maybe I'm not let me get off the soapbox. This ain't the soapbox for me. But still, I definitely believe his credibility. I think it's very interesting. Whether or not it's extraterrestrial or government conspiracy or just unidentified flying object, I don't know. I'm not there. Definitely the footage seems to be some strange kind of aircraft. And it moves unlike any aircraft I've seen before terrestrial, but it moves like every other extraterrestrial aircraft I've heard of. So,
yeah.
The ability to float just up and down.
And the speed it would move at.
The silence.
Mm-hmm. The light. Especially the lights. And the change. Oh, because I don't know if we mentioned it a lot, but he was talking about them communicating with the lights.
Yeah. I talked a little bit about that.
So I think that was so interesting. But I think that's it. That's all I have to say.
That's all I've got to say. Join us next week when we discuss stories about the Ouija board.
Yes. I'm so excited.
We're going to deep dive and give a little bit of overview about the history of Ouija, or the spirit board, and give you some ooky, spooky, kooky stories about people that use the Ouija board and don't say goodbye. Or do say goodbye, I don't know. Hell. If you like what you hear, follow us, give us a like and follow, subscribe to any of our accounts on social media. We've got Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Our YouTube is Encounters a Paranormal Experience. You can find us on Instagram at Encounters a Paranormal. If you want to reach out, send us an email at encountersthepodcast@gmail.com. Leave us a review, like and subscribe. And until next time, I'm Dakota.
I'm Amanda.
Stay spooky.